application we're using 4.5-inch long deck type screws, and this really makes things easy when you're to start the screws. The panels are all marked with individual marks for whether you're going 12 inches on center or 8 inches on center. So typical application is going to be 12 inches on center. So we'll put a screw here and here. Now if you have to do 8 inches on center where you're just going to the sheathing or you have SIPS panels, then you'd use this one, and this one that are 8 inches apart. Slight angle upward. We put all the screws in first to make it easier when you're reaching out and a little bit awkward. You can still get this over the end and you're still able to put the screw in. This one's set up kind of neat because you can set up how much you want it to recess. So this will recess that 1/2 inch into the stud. You want to start out on the center of a stud. We've marked the line for the center of the stud. So it's real simple to just put the panels in place. This was a flashing that we had snapped the line and leveled. So we have pretty much everything ready to go. There's another flashing that's going to cover over this edge later that we can just shove in there, so it will allow the water to drain. One of the important things to note, make it easier to put the panels in, is to just put the bottom screws in first, and then when you put the next row of panels on, then you'll tighten the top, this screw and then the next screw. That makes it easier to slide the panels and get the tongue groove instead of having it fit real super tight to the wall right away. It makes it quicker to go in. You want to make sure that this first row is all lined up tight together. You don't want to make sure there's not a gap in there. Now this thing really makes it easy cutting the window out. I like to set this on top of the tongue so it's not bedded down. That way you have room to get the panels in. And then I just take a Sharpie, go along the top so we have a mark on the top. And then same thing for the center. This I'm going to make sure that it's positioned right so the end of the panel is right there, and then I have a mark for the end of it. So you can see my mark for the end. I'm going to allow a little bit of space, so I'm just going to go down that groove right there. And then for the cut under the window, line up the tape measure with your mark. And again, we want to go a little bit past that mark so we can get that space for the window. And across like that. So I'll cut this one first. Little trick if you're having with the saw is placing WD-40 on it. Cut it about like a 1x2. And I did not pre-start the screws in there just to make it easier to cut, but you see how I have room to still get that in there. I'm not able to slide it. If you're cut it too high, you're not able to slide it into place. So with this, you do have to make sure the end gets in place, and then down like that. The ground now, as far as cutting these windows, he already has this measurement here. I'm going to show you two ways to do it. The first way was to just look at the numbers on the panel. So with this, I would be right back here through this line, like in order to match up. Now this is another way of doing it also. You turn the panel upside down, slide it up against there, and with this the tongue is already sticking out, so that's your gap that you want. So what you want to do is just mark it with the cutting line right here, and there's a cutting line there. So this is the line you want to use, which is the same as that. So I'm just going to cut it through right there. Here's our piece we cut off. We can use that, and we're going to slide it right up against it. Then we're going to leave a gap this time because we don't have that tongue sticking out. And then we're going to go to the cutting line on the panel, which is this right here. And we're going to mark that and cut off that. So this little 2-inch piece is going to be the only waste we have. One tip as far as putting the panels in place, you don't want to try to put them in place this way because it bites the tongue in the groove and it's hard to get in place. If you put them like this and go down, it pushes it into the right place, then you can just pull it down. So another thing, you can't, it's hard to put the panel down like that and then slide it down too. So it's just a lot easier. Put it in there, butt up this side, and then push it tight and seat it. Come right up then, put the piece in place. Just line on there, and we're going to want to cut about a 1/4 inch back from there so we have a little gap in there so we can spray foam when we put both pieces together. I'll show you that. That piece fitting in, and then when we do, we're going to line this up with the stud over here, but then you can see we have a little gap in there to be able to spray foam and seal it nice and tight. For fitting this piece in again, remember this is marked right at the middle of the 15. So all I'll do is go over here. I'm going to be cutting right there. Then the only other thing I need to do to cut around this window is put my tape measure up there and measure 18 inches. So we want to be about 18 1/8 or so. So it has a little bit of space, or 18 1/4, so we can foam it in place. So here's the 18¼ and then we're cutting out this part right here. And this is where if you don't have that gap in there, you won't be able to get this panel in place, and there's not enough room to go up and slide it down, and it's real difficult to slide down. So you want to just like that. See, we're back on layout again. We've got a cut across there. So now we just need to screw it in place. And again, if you're reaching off to the side or something, what we're going to do is make sure we're aligned perfectly at the top like that before I screw the next one. Because it will make it hard to get that last one in. You know, literally the gap. Pre-start all these on the ground first, because it would be easy to forget one of these. All right, to fit this top in there, we wanted to go right up to the attic chute as the way we laid out the panels. We're gonna have to notch out around these trusses here. So one way to do it is to put the panel up here, line it up so it's centered on the stud. You can see the stud here. So now we're centered. We can push it up against there, or we can just sight. Instead of, I'm not quite that tall to reach up there and put a mark up there. So I'm just going to put a mark down, sight and put a mark down here, and a mark right down here where we want to cut out. And we're going to be we're marking it here, but I can just sight over and cut it off. Same for here. I'm going to go right next to that stud there, and then right through this one here. And again, you want to leave it a little bit. Now the only thing we have to do is do a measurement as far as how much of a notch to put in there. And you do have to have enough notch so you can get it over the groove there. And if you're 3/4 of an inch, it's really easy to spray foam that in if you wanted to seal that. Take your measurement now, and the measurement you want is right off the face of this panel where it touches. So I'm going to say it's 20 inches. So we're going to mark 20 inches up from here, and then cut out our pockets. And then we're right there. We're right there. We're following our marks that we had there. We really don't need to put any marks other than just quick glance, see where we're at. A jigsaw works great for this, and you can just go out and you can just twist the blade in the foam real easy and come back. So this makes it a lot more difficult. We're going to struggle a little more in here, and I'm just going to cut this and break out that block. There we go. And you can see that's a little sloppy, but a little spray foam and you've got it nice and tight. I'm going to take this back down and put the screws in because I'm not going to quite be able to reach up there with the ladder I have. Now that we got this panel fitting, we're going to pull it down and air seal behind it. What we're going to want to do is seal right at the top plate. This has, so it's airtight at the top plate line. So it's just the last part of So we're just putting the bead of sealant right along the top plate. And then we're just going to put it up there and push it into place. You can see the back side of the panels have these little grooves on them. That just is the final step. It's like a hot air balloon. It doesn't let the air out when it's sealed like that. It keeps air movement from happening. Place. just enough room for the air chute to go through there. So when you start in the center of the wall, all you have to do is find one stud in the center layout. Usually it's finding the sheathing through the house wrap. And it really doesn't matter how you put the house wrap up with all the markings on it, because all you need, it's self-laying out. So as soon as you line up one, it works and you hit every stud each way. So it's really easier to do than conventional foam board or something where you put it up there. These smaller sheets, 4 foot by 2 foot, so working around the windows much quicker, much easier than a 4 by 8 sheet, especially if it's a windy day, that you're going to have a tough time with that 4 by 8 sheet. The other thing is you waste all the foam in the window, where this, you noticed where we went up to the window and then used to scrap on the other side of the window, and we wasted about 4 inches. So if you're wondering what I was screwing into, there's a where it says recessed stud right behind the logo InSoFast. There's a fully insulated stud, so it's continuous insulation. Now we're actually been fastening the screws to these studs into the wall, so these actually go into the framing 1.5 inches. And this is 3 3/4 inches that actually will outperform a 2x6 framed wall with R20 insulation, because it's continuous insulation and its actual R value is R15.9. The studs in here, this eliminates other methods where you're having to put a layer of foam board, taping it, sealing it, another layer of foam board, taping it and sealing it. Then you're putting furring strips on with long screws going all the way through, instead of just standard construction screws here that cost about 18 cents a piece. You're looking at about $1.18 a piece for the structural screws. The other huge advantage is, especially if you're doing something, if you were thinking about doing something like rock wool, when you go to put these strips on here and you get the big structural screws with the big head sticking out, you also compress the rock wool so it pulls it in, so you have to put a string line across there in order to get a straight wall. Notice on the panels, this cutaway panel it has an electrical raceway, a vertical electrical raceway that's actually located by these little dots on here next to the stud. So if we're doing wiring, you could put a box in there and fasten the box right to the stud. It also has a horizontal raceway at the top of each row for running anything if you're wanting to go horizontal. Finishing off the bottom of this, we've got this little L angle flashing that we've bent, and that's just going to tuck in there like that, so it gives it a nice clean look. Now the starter strip is going to go and fasten onto there, and you're good to go. These windows are outset windows, or we call them outies. This one is actually framed out. Normally you're going to be framing out the same distance as the InSoFast panel, so it works out real easy if you just wanted to screw an extra 2x4 around the opening and then set your window in it. And this is going to have vertical siding on it, vertical steel, so it's going to get these batten strips every 2 feet on center. So now it's flush when the steel siding goes on. It's standard J trim or trim that they use for the steel siding on there. This actually has a rain screen front, so now it still drains water behind these, so you don't have to worry about water getting on top of these. So we left the gap around the side of the window purposely so it would allow us to be able to seal it. Now we have a small gap at the top as well. Don't want to foam that in. You only want to foam in the sides, the underneath. If there's water in there, you want it to be able to get out. You don't want to block it from getting out. Foaming on the sides. Gap and crack. You can certainly get the Pro gun. That works a lot easier. Now this, where it oozes out here, one of the tricks is wait for it to set up a bit when it's all skinned over, and you can actually just take and push it back with your finger without getting it all filled with the foam. So we're going to seal underneath the bottom here, and got a little carried away with the gap on this. But it's a quick, easy fill. Now, this is all sealed. You've got your pamphlet, and then any water that comes down here, now it's going to hit that and then come to the rain screen. It's not going to get behind. Now, if there's anything behind, it can still drain out. So, unlike the top, you want to keep it open. This, you want to seal it. Be about the foam being the right, dry enough to be able to not have to worry about cutting this off later. If you had a utility knife, it would be very difficult to cut the foam out without cutting this out. So when it's not set, when it's dry enough so you can touch it, what you want to do is just take and push it back, and this will not come out anymore after that. So push the air out of it, and you'll eliminate having to trim. This is a little bit much. We'll see what happens. You'll know if you do it too early, and the foam will wear off of your hand. Take the foam and kind of punch it down like it's bread dough almost, and the air will come out of it. I don't have this set yet, but this is the last place that you want to seal, so this is how this seam would work. Now you're just going to foam in there. This is, I think my can is out. But you're just going to fill that with foam, and when you get to these seams, you want to put a little bit of extra in there so you block up any space, block up the space by the tongue and the groove. But it's just filling it.